The quiet war inside the British royal family has just exploded into open conflict. And this time, it is not the tabloids driving the story. It is Prince William himself. Sources close to the Wales household are confirming what many of us have sensed for months. The relationship between the Prince of Wales and Queen Camilla has reached a breaking point. And the final straw was not a public slight, not a leaked letter, and not another clumsy interview. It was something far more personal. It was about Prince Louis. According to multiple people familiar with the situation, Camilla issued a quiet but firm instruction earlier this summer that the young prince was no longer welcome at the private lodge on the Windsor estate that has long been used by the extended family for informal stays. The reason given behind closed doors was disruption. The real reason, those same sources say, was far colder. Camilla had grown tired of the energetic, unfiltered presence of the youngest Wales child in spaces she considers a domain. William's reaction was not diplomatic. It was not measured. It was not the carefully worded statement we have come to expect from the future king. He ordered her out. Get out of Windsor. Those 4 words, according to 2 separate accounts, were delivered in a private meeting that left staff stunned. One longtime palace aide described the atmosphere afterward as electric and silent. Another simply said, the air has drawn a line, and the Queen Consort just found herself on the wrong side of it. Let us go back and understand how we reached this moment. For years, Camilla has cultivated an image of the steady, slightly mischievous stepmother figure who finally brought calm to the monarchy after the chaos of the 1990s. The public narrative was carefully managed. Charles and Camilla were happy, the children had accepted her, and the institution was moving forward. But inside the private residences, the reality has always been more complicated. Prince William has never fully warmed to the woman who, in his view, occupied the place his mother once held. He has been polite. He has been correct. He has stood beside her at state occasions and smiled for the cameras. But closeness was never there. Those who know him well say the wound left by Diana's death never fully closed, and Camilla's presence in the family has always felt, to him, like a permanent reminder of that loss. Kate has been more pragmatic. She has maintained civil relations and focused on protecting her children from the worst of the palace undercurrents. But even she, sources claim, has grown increasingly protective of the children's privacy and emotional space as they have grown older. Louis, in particular, has become the lightning rod. The 7-year-old is bright, physical, and unfiltered. He does not perform the polished royal restraint that older generations expect. He runs. He asks loud questions. He treats the vast rooms of Windsor like a playground because, to him, that is exactly what they are. For many in the family, this is simply the joy of a young child. For Camilla, according to those present during several visits, it has become an irritation. The ban did not come as a formal written order. It was quieter and more effective. Staff at the lodge were told, in careful language, that the younger children would be better accommodated elsewhere for the remainder of the summer. When William's team inquired, the message was clarified. Louis was not to be brought. The other children could visit under supervision. Louis could not. William received the news while at Adelaide Cottage. Those close to him describe a rare flash of pure anger. This was not about protocol or image. This was about his son being treated as an inconvenience in a home that, in William's view, belongs as much to the next generation as to the current one. He requested a private audience. Camilla agreed. The meeting took place in a side room at Windsor Castle, away from the main state apartments. No aide were present for the core exchange. What followed, according to the accounts that have since filtered out, was brief and devastating. William is said to have told her that the lodge was no longer available to her for private use. He made clear that the Wales family would control access going forward. And then came the line that has already begun circulating among senior staff. Get out of Windsor. Camilla's response, sources say, was icy silence followed by a short statement that she would speak to the king. William's reply was reportedly equally cold. The king could be informed, but the decision regarding the lodge and the children's access stood. In the days that followed, movement on the estate became noticeable to those who watched these things closely. Camilla's usual weekend presence at the lodge ceased. Certain staff rotations shifted, and, most tellingly, Louis was seen with his parents on the grounds of Windsor in the days immediately after the confrontation, a quiet but unmistakable signal that the ban had been reversed by force of will. This is not merely a family disagreement over a child being noisy. It is a power struggle over the future tone of the monarchy. William is no longer the young prince forced to accept decisions made above him. He is the working heir, the man who will one day sit on the throne, and he is increasingly unwilling to allow the emotional legacy of the previous generation to dictate the childhood of his own children. Camilla, for her part, has spent 2 decades carefully building her position. She has survived public hostility, media storms, and the long shadow of Diana. To be told, in essence, that she is no longer welcome in a key private space on the estate is a profound personal and symbolic blow. The wider household is already feeling the aftershocks. Some long-time Charles loyalists are said to be alarmed at the open fracture. Others, particularly those who have watched William's quiet determination grow over the years, see it as inevitable. The old compromise, keep the peace, smile for the cameras, let the past stay buried, is no longer sustainable when the next generation is old enough to feel the tension. And Louis, of course, remains blissfully unaware of the storm he has unintentionally triggered. He continues to race across lawns, climb trees, and treat the ancient walls of Windsor as his personal adventure park. In that sense, the confrontation may have achieved exactly what William intended, the protection of an ordinary childhood inside an extraordinary family. But the cost is only beginning to become clear, because when the future king tells a Queen Consort to leave a royal residence, the monarchy itself is forced to confront a truth it has spent years trying to paper over. The past is not settled, the wounds are not healed, and the next generation is no longer willing to pretend otherwise. What happens next will test every carefully maintained alliance inside the firm. Charles will be forced to choose sides, or at least to manage a fallout. Kate will continue her quiet work of shielding the children while standing firmly with her husband, and Camilla will have to decide whether to fight for the space she believes she has earned, or to retreat and recalculate. One thing is already certain. The polite fiction that everything inside the royal family is harmonious has been shattered in a private room at Windsor, and the man who shattered it is the same man who will one day wear the crown. The consequences of that private confrontation are already rippling outward in ways the public has not yet fully grasped. Within 48 hours of William's order, subtle but unmistakable changes began to appear across the Windsor estate. The lodge that had long served as Camilla's preferred weekend retreat was quietly locked and the keys reassigned. Staff who had previously reported to her household were redirected. A discreet notice went out that any further stays by the Queen Consort would require formal approval from the Prince of Wales's office. In royal terms, that is the equivalent of changing the locks. Camilla did not accept the eviction in silence. According to those briefed on the aftermath, she went directly to the king. The conversation that followed is said to have been strained, even by the standards of a marriage that has weathered decades of scrutiny. Charles, sources claim, found himself caught between the woman he loves and the son who will one day inherit everything. His instinct, as always, was to smooth and delay. But William had already made the decision irreversible. The lodge was no longer available. The ban on Louis had been lifted by force. And the message was clear. The heir was no longer prepared to negotiate the emotional boundaries of his own children's lives. What makes this moment so dangerous for the institution is not the personal insult alone. It is the precedent. For the first time in modern memory, a senior working royal has publicly, inside the family, at least, asserted territorial control over a royal residence against the wishes of the monarch's wife. The optics inside the household are brutal. Camilla, who spent years carefully positioning herself as a stabilizing force after Diana, has been reduced to a guest in spaces she once moved through with quiet ownership. Those who have watched the Wales family closely say this was never only about one noisy 7-year-old. Louis became the symbol. His unfiltered energy, his refusal to perform the restrained royal childhood expected of previous generations, exposed the deeper fracture. Camilla's alleged discomfort with that energy was interpreted by William as a rejection of the very future he is trying to protect. A monarchy that allows its youngest members to be children before they are forced to become symbols. Kate's role in the days after the confrontation has been characteristically measured but firm. She has made no public comment, of course. Yet those around her describe a woman who has long understood the cost of palace undercurrents on young minds. She has quietly increased the children's time at Adelaide Cottage and reduced unnecessary exposure to the more formal wings of Windsor. In private, she is said to have told close friends that the children's emotional safety comes before any adult sense of entitlement to space or tradition. That stance has only hardened William's resolve. Meanwhile, the staff who live and work inside these walls are walking on eggshells. Long-serving members of the household who once moved freely between the different royal households now find themselves choosing sides with every schedule change and every guest list. Some remain fiercely loyal to Charles and Camilla. Others have begun to align, carefully and quietly, with the Wales household, sensing that the future power center has already shifted. One senior figure who has served 3 generations of the family described the atmosphere as a calm before a very long winter. The wider royal machine is already calculating the damage. Any public hint of this rupture would be catastrophic for the carefully curated image of unity. So the official line remains silence. No statements. No briefings. No acknowledgements. Yet the absence of Camilla from certain private family gatherings that would normally have included her has not gone unnoticed by the sharpest observers. Photographers who track the family's movements have registered the change in patterns. The lodge lights that once burned late into weekend evenings have stayed dark. There is also the question of the king himself. Charles has spent his entire adult life waiting for the crown and managing the complicated legacy of his first marriage. To see his son draw such a hard line against a woman who has been his constant companion is, according to those near him, deeply painful. Yet he is also a realist. He knows that the monarchy's survival depends on the next generation's willingness to inherit it with conviction. Alienating William at this stage will be an act of institutional self-harm. So the king is said to be urging restraint on both sides while privately accepting that the lord's decision will stand. Camilla's next moves will be watched with forensic attention. Will she attempt a quiet rapprochement, perhaps through carefully staged public appearances alongside William and Kate? Or will she dig in, relying on the king's affection and the residual loyalty of the older household to reclaim ground? Early indications suggest a period of strategic withdrawal. She has cancelled several informal engagements that would have brought her into closer contact with the Wales children. The message being sent, whether intentional or not, is that she is choosing distance over further confrontation. For now. But distance is not the same as resolution. The underlying grievance remains. William's defenders argue that a line had to be drawn somewhere, and that protecting a child's right to exist freely inside the family home was a correct place to draw it. Camilla's supporters counter that no senior royal should be publicly humiliated in this way, and that the heir's actions risk looking like a personal vendetta dressed up as parental protectiveness. Both sides can point to genuine emotional wounds. Neither side appears ready to concede. As the summer progresses, the practical effects continue to accumulate. Family gatherings that once rotated between residences are being restructured. Certain traditional weekends at Windsor have been quietly relocated. The children, especially Louis, continue their energetic explorations of the estate under protective eye of their parents, seemingly unaware that their presence has become a political statement. In the strange logic of royal life, a 7-year-old's right to run across a lawn has become the flashpoint for a generational power struggle. Looking further ahead, the implications are profound. When William eventually becomes king, the emotional architecture of the family will already have been rewritten. The old accommodations that allowed Charles and Camilla to rebuild their lives in the shadow of Diana will no longer be the operating system. A new, sharper boundary will be in place, one that prioritizes the psychological safety of the next generation over the comfort of the previous one. Whether that produces a healthier monarchy or a more fractured one remains to be seen. For the moment, the lodge stands empty of its former regular occupant. The keys have changed hands. The ban on Louis has been overturned, and the 4 words spoken in that private room continue to echo through the corridors of Windsor. Get out of Windsor. They were not shouted. They did not need to be. In the quiet, hierarchical world of the royal household, a calmly delivered eviction from the heir to the throne carries more force than any public outburst. Camilla has been told, in the clearest possible language, that there are limits to her place inside the family William is determined to shape. The story is far from over. The king must still manage the daily reality of a divided household. Kate must continue shielding 3 young children from the adult storms that swirl around them. And William must live with the knowledge that he has permanently altered the emotional map of the institution he will one day lead. But one fact is already settled. The polite fiction of seamless royal harmony has been broken by the future king himself. And the boy at the center of it all, Prince Louis, remains free to treat the ancient grounds of Windsor as a playground they should always have been for a child of his age. In the end, that may be the most radical act of all.